Interesting ideas.
Interesting.
Yeah, and this one, it's not just like a feel-good self-help video, you know?
Yeah.
It really gets into like the practical stuff about our brains and how they work.
Yeah, that's what I'm interested in for sure.
And the video, like, it even talks about this thing called the 2190 rule for habits.
Okay. I'm intrigued already.
Yeah. So before we get into that, I want to like lay the groundwork.
Sure.
What do you think about this video? Like, what were your initial impressions just from like glancing at the material?
Well, the first thing that jumps out at me is the focus on action.
Okay.
Like, it's not just about feeling motivated or having willpower. It's about understanding like the mechanics of self-discipline and like how to actually implement.
Right. Like, give me the tools, you know.
Exactly.
So to start, like, what is self-discipline even?
Well, the video defines it as like choosing willpower over desire, doing things on time, keeping promises to yourself. But it also makes this distinction between discipline and self-discipline.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So like discipline comes from outside, you know, rules, deadlines, stuff like that. But self-discipline is that inner drive, the motivation that comes from within.
Okay. So it's like the difference between having a personal trainer yelling at you versus like finding that motivation yourself.
Yeah. Like when nobody's watching, are you still pushing yourself?
That's a good question.
So the first rule that they talk about is removing temptations.
Okay. I'm already feeling a little attacked.
And they're talking about like literally getting rid of distractions like your phone, social media, even Netflix.
Seriously.
Yeah. They say like if you're trying to write a paper, go to a library instead of sitting on the couch.
That makes sense.
Because our brains, they're wired to choose the easy path, you know?
The path of least resistance.
Yeah. So when we're faced with something challenging, our brain is like, hey, let's check Instagram.
It's a constant battle.
By removing those temptations, we're not fighting our brains as much.
So it's about like setting yourself up for success.
Exactly. Create an environment that supports your goals.
Okay. That's pretty smart, actually.
Yeah. And that leads into rule #2, which is don't wait for the right mood.
Oh, tell me about it. I'm the queen of, I'll do it when I feel like it.
We've all been there.
But the video is saying that action often comes before motivation.
Right. They even suggest this thing called the 3-second rule.
What's that?
You count to 3 and then just start the task. No overthinking it.
I don't know about that. Does that really work?
Well, think about it. Procrastination is often this battle between different parts of our brain.
Okay.
Our prefrontal cortex, which plans and prioritizes.
Right.
And our limbic system, which wants instant gratification.
Yeah.
The 3-second rule helps you bypass that conflict. By acting quickly, you're not giving your limbic system time to talk you out of it.
So you're basically like hacking your brain.
Exactly. You're hijacking the reward system.
Wow. Okay. I'm starting to see how this all connects.
And the interesting thing is that even a small action can create momentum.
Like how?
Think about a time when you finally overcame procrastination and started working on something.
Yeah.
How did it feel once you got going?
I guess it felt like relief almost.
Yeah.
Like I finally broke through a wall.
And then you probably found it easier to keep going, right?
Yeah, like I was in the zone. And before I knew it, I'd made a ton of progress.
Exactly. And that brings us to rule #3, setting achievable goals.
Okay, but what does achievable even mean?
The video talks about being realistically ambitious.
That sounds kind of vague.
Yeah, well, they give this example of a music video director who publicly announced his deadline to create accountability.
Whoa, talk about pressure.
Right, but it worked. He finished the video on time.
So it's about like leveraging that fear of judgment or something.
It's more about tapping into our desire for social approval. We're more likely to follow through when we've made a public commitment.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that.
But accountability isn't just external. It's also about holding yourself accountable to your own values and goals.
Like having an internal compass or something.
Exactly. If your goals aren't aligned with what truly matters to you, it's going to be way harder to stay disciplined.
It's like you're working against yourself.
Right. You need that internal drive to keep you going.
Okay. So far, these rules are making a lot of sense.
And we're just getting started.
Can't wait to hear what else they have to say. Yeah, it's like you have to find that balance, right? Like you want to push yourself, but not set yourself up for failure.
It's about finding that sweet spot where the goal is both exciting and attainable, you know?
Like a challenge, but not impossible.
Right. And this music video director example is a perfect illustration of that. Publicly announcing his deadline was brilliant.
It's like ultimate accountability.
It is, because it taps into our innate desire for social approval. We're more likely to follow through on commitments when we've made them public.
It's like peer pressure, but in a good way.
Exactly. But remember, accountability isn't just external. It's also about holding yourself accountable to your own values and aspirations.
Right, like aligning your actions with your inner compass.
If your goals aren't aligned with what truly matters to you, it's going to be that much harder to muster the self-discipline to achieve them.
It's like you're fighting an uphill battle.
Exactly. You need that internal drive to keep you going. And that leads us perfectly to rule #4 think long term.
That one really resonated with me. The video quoted Abraham Lincoln.
What did he say?
The best way to predict the future is to create it. Pretty powerful stuff.
It is. It's about shifting our mindset from immediate gratification to delayed gratification.
So self-discipline is like a tool for shaping our future.
Right. We're essentially investing in our future happiness and fulfillment.
Instead of just reacting to things as they come.
It's about becoming the author of your own story rather than a passive character. And that brings us to rule #5, building a productive routine.
Okay, so remember how I was skeptical about the 3-second rule? We'll get ready for another dose of skepticism because this rule introduces the 21-90 rule.
21 days to form a habit and 90 days for a lifestyle change.
Right, and honestly, those magic number rules always make me a little suspicious.
Why is that?
It just seems too simplistic.
Yeah.
You know, I know there's research on habit formation, but does it really boil down to a specific number of days?
You're right to be cautious about oversimplifications. Habit formation is a complex process that varies from person to person.
Like some habits form quickly and others take forever.
Exactly. There was a study published in the European Journal of Social Psychology that found it can take anywhere from 18 to 254 days to form a habit.
254 days. That's almost a year. So much for 21 days.
It just highlights that there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Okay, so the 21-90 rule is more of a guideline than a hard and fast rule.
Exactly. The key takeaway is consistency over time. It's about building systems and structures that support your desired habits.
And like the video said, turning neutral activities into positive ones.
Right, like listening to a podcast during your commute instead of just zoning out.
Yeah. It's about being intentional with those little pockets of time.
And it all adds up. But the question is, how do we maintain that consistency when life gets crazy?
That's the million-dollar question.
Well, that's where willpower comes in.
But isn't willpower like a limited resource?
Not necessarily. I think it's more helpful to think of willpower as a muscle that gets stronger with use.
So the more we use it, the stronger it gets.
Exactly. Every time you choose to align your actions with your goals, even when it's difficult, you're strengthening that willpower muscle.
It's like a positive feedback loop.
Right. The more you exercise your self-discipline, the stronger it becomes.
That makes me feel a lot less discouraged, actually.
It should, because it means you have the power to change.
And it's not about being perfect all the time.
Exactly. It's about understanding your patterns, recognizing your weaknesses, and developing strategies to overcome those challenges.
So it's more about self-awareness and growth than just forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do.
Precisely. It's about aligning your actions with your values and aspirations. It's about creating a life of intention and purpose.
So self-discipline is really about freedom then?
In a way, yes. It's about liberating yourself from those impulsive behaviors that hold you back from reaching your full potential.
That's a really interesting way to think about it.
It's not about limiting yourself. It's about empowering yourself to become the best version of yourself.
Wow, this has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I have a completely new perspective on self-discipline.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's not just about getting things done. It's about personal growth and aligning your actions with your deepest values.
And remember, it's a journey, not a destination. There will be setbacks and challenges along the way.
That's for sure.
But the key is to keep learning, keep experimenting, and keep moving forward.
That's great advice. A huge thank you to you for sharing your insights today.
It was my pleasure.
And to all of you listening out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of self-discipline. We hope you found it valuable, and we'll see you next time.